Okay, are any of you neurologists? Okay, good. My simplifications would really pain the only one that I've ever met. I know we have other scientists and philosophers, theologians, anthropologists, many of you who like to debate the meaning of words and ideas. But painful simplifications from amateurs really energizes your response, so I think you're going to be fine. This is my simplified, tentative understanding of what it is to be a human. There was a big bang and stuff happened. We evolved, and here we are. Evolution is not survival of the fittest. It is survival long enough to reliably reproduce. Evolved ability to survive and reproduce looks less to me like planned in advance intelligent design and more like MacGyver collecting whatever he has at hand to repurpose into a hang glider or repair an engine. It only has to work long enough to do the job, and it's a win for that bundle of genes in the ever-branching, flowing river of life. I was fascinated with MacGyver as a child, so I'm not really disappointed to think of myself as a product of eons-long, self-perpetuating, MacGyvering smash-up of proteins and electricity. It's rather thrilling. The river of life is not an ordered canal. It's a wild river that goes where it goes into the fog of the future, and we're part of it. Our evolved bodies have brains. Brains to sift through all the current sensory data received from the rest of the body, combine that with memory of past experience to shape our ongoing map of reality and where we are in it. That takes a lot of energy and intensive calculation. Energy is expensive. Brains have limited capacity. That has to be budgeted. So brains have shortcuts, fudge details, and rely on habits and automate as much of the process as possible. Conscious effort is effort and requires more energy in the brain and body. Most of what we do automatically without conscious thought. We are MacGyvered to survive. What we think of as wisdom is not necessarily what guides the priorities and choices that construct our personal maps of reality that have evolved for survival and reproduction of the species. I'm not going to talk about reproduction today. We're going to leave that to the Our Whole Lives program that CVUU will probably be starting up in the next year or so. A map of reality primarily made to keep us safe enough to survive is different than a map to bring us joy or peace or love. Even though we like to connect safety to love and peace, we know humans can survive and reproduce without it, and have. Our brains don't have the capacity to process and integrate all the information our limited senses feed it and put it on that map, let alone know and process all the information outside our senses. It needs that shortcut, many, many shortcuts. The shortcut our brain uses for surviving is predictability. The map we make of reality is charted by what to expect, how to predict and interpret what is going on so we can survive. We are social animals, another shortcut. A way to multiply our capacity to map reality is sharing and cooperating in constructing our maps of reality. Frequent contact with other humans validates what is real, predictable, where we fit, what we should do. Our brains evolved to function in a community. Without others, the map becomes unmoored from shared reality of other humans, distorting reactions and deteriorating the sense of self, which is one of the reasons why solitary confinement is considered torture. One of the most powerful shortcut tools constructs the most stripped down, simple, and clear seeming map of reality. That shortcut is done with the part of our brain most active when we are afraid. Many of us learn basic facts about parts of the brain and how they function. There's parts that take care of breathing, digestion, parts that process and reconstruct memory, label faces, and send signals triggering cascades of hormones to remind us we're hungry, we're tired, relaxed, or energetic. And there's a part of the brain that strips nuance, context, and detail from our perception of reality, so all energy, calculation, and action can be focused on a few variables, getting us out of danger. All narrowed to stark simplicity, labeled, here's danger, here's safety, here's right, and here's wrong, enemy, friend, God, devil, black and white, leaving no room for doubt or curious questions to slow the saving response of fight, flight, freeze, or grovel. And there is a part of the brain, when we are young, we gain our sense of self. At the same time, our brain makes our foundation map of reality and where we fit in. Habits of thought and reaction are laid down deep to give us the ability to quickly judge a situation, predict outcomes, and have a response that will keep us safe without even thinking of it. We know how to step back when we see a moving car, hold out our hands when we're falling, cry for help when we're hurt. We're born with a few of these reactions already part of our nascent reality map. Others are learned from experience and relationships with other humans. While the foundation is laid early in life, our map continues to add or subtract details as we journey. All our maps, all our ideas of what is reality and how we fit into it are as different as the combined experiences, combined genes, combined ways to sift through all of it and choose what is important and what is not in the moment. The map is not the territory, but it has worked for the task of survival and reproduction for this long. We're here. But this view of the MacGyvered human brain using every trick of efficiency and every shortcut to survival and reproduction is not a moral agent any more than a dog conditioned to jump in fear of an electric shock when a bell rings. Simplification and efficiency are powerful tools for survival, and we wouldn't be here, at least not as we are, without these tools. But MacGyvered objects have unintended effects that can manifest more prominently than the original use. This is a weakness or a strength of being human, depending on where you're at. Where on the reality map of survival is there beauty, joy, equity, acceptance, deep satisfaction, and love? We know we want these things. Some of us experience them at times, or have at least heard of them or imagined them, know them and want it. Sometimes even more than survival. Even if the seed of love came from a compulsion to survive, it grows in wild ways, far larger than that. That is part of our reality too. I'm now going to jump to a conclusion like those medieval recipes for cake that skip all the useful directions and just say things like, mix in enough flour for the consistency and then bake it not too long or not too hot. We can't know everything. We can barely understand our own map of simplified reality and what might have happened to make it the way it is. There is not one of us that fully knows the map of another. Why some confounding trivial details are on their map and not other information that you prize and find useful that seems so obvious and common sense. Why that person's brain decided to stay in an abusive situation instead of leaving when you might have been able to leave. Why that one responds to loneliness by isolating themselves further, and another one responds to loneliness by talking too much, and why someone you love can't understand how wonderful they are just as they are. Why so many attack the very people that can save them. Why some want to binge watch The Golden Bachelor on Hulu. Why is that woman dancing on the treadmill instead of walking? Why are they all so weird? What happened to make their maps the way they are? And you're so normal. To find our way to joy, peace, equity, all those things that culminate in love on our survival map of simplified reality, requires others and their confounding brains with their obscure maps of reality so different from our own. Everyone else has information we are missing. Their construct of reality, their brain mapped for their safety. A unique, MacGyvered wonder, all of us. Curiosity, compassion, and careful attention can give us a glimpse of their map. We never know when we will get that shift in our perception to reveal what we didn't know, and we couldn't know by ourselves. A greater reality of love and peace that we can share. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values.
I'm going to try not to take too much of your time, but I do have some more to add to what we're talking about today. This conversation started as us talking about people who are neurodivergent, things like autism and mental illness and ADHD and those sorts of things. But when we really dug into the root of why we wanted to have this conversation, it really came back to how all of our brains are very different from one another. And to say that there is such a thing as neurotypical of normal is really quite absurd, especially among UUs. So I do want to start with a little disclaimer. While I myself am not what some might refer to as neurotypical, I also have not lived the experience of every person out there who is neurodivergent. I am also not a psychiatrist or psychologist. All I know is that we live in a world full of people with different brains, in our case, very different brains, and we know that we need to find a way to interact with and live among one another in love and peace. Mandy did a great job talking about our brains, about how they develop, how all of us are living in a slightly different reality or a different map from one another. Some days it feels like a wonder that we're able to understand each other at all. So let me give you a few examples. I saw a man at the beach yelling, "Help, shark, help." I just laughed. I knew that shark wasn't going to help him. Yes, it's joke time. I'm telling jokes. Thank you for humoring me. My company ships Deliquid equipment all over the country. We'd recently run out of bubble wrap, so I went into the storeroom and fetched a new roll. Since I'm not in the shipping department, I wasn't sure where to take it. So I said, "Where do you want this big roll of bubble wrap?" to my boss. And she said, "Just pop it in the corner." It took me 3 hours. A guy walks into a hotel running a little low on funds, but desperate for a place to crash for the evening. He approaches the reception desk. "I'd like a single room," he said. "Certainly, sir," said the receptionist, "with a bath or a shower." The guy's a bit short on cash, so he says, "Well, what's the difference?" "You have to stand in the shower," said the receptionist. Anyway, before leaving on vacation, I wanted to make sure we addressed some of the pest issues we'd been having around the house. I hurried to the store and said to the person at the counter, "I'd like a mouse trap. Please be quick. I have a train to catch." "I'm sorry," the cashier replied, "but we don't have any that big." Catch the train. Catch. Whatever. Anyway, my point is, we will always have misunderstandings like this. We're never going to understand the entirety of a person. The majority of our interactions with people during our life will be momentary, with no time to learn their history, their feelings, their thoughts, and their beliefs. However, we can always still default to treating one another with empathy and compassion. Why assume the worst when we can just as easily not? Let me share an example. I do have a full-time job outside my duties here at the CVUU, believe it or not. I work at Talk to Me Technologies, helping families work through funding for speech generating devices. And I'm happy to talk more about that outside the sermon because it really is a fascinating company. Anyway, there's a lot of communication with families that needs to happen at my job. And sometimes the timelines of getting the equipment can be kind of lengthy. So I approached my boss once early in my time at the company, concerned about an email that I received. A parent had reached out saying they were confused about the fact we were still reaching out for paperwork when they were under the impression that the device would be there already. And I said to my boss, "This mom is angry. I don't know what to say." And my boss calmly had me read the email out loud. And she said, "Do they sound angry or do they just sound confused? Did they say they are angry?" And we talked through that tendency to assign feelings and intentions to things without knowing truly what someone was thinking or feeling. So I called the mom, and as it turns out, she just hadn't been given a clear understanding of that timeline. She wasn't angry at all. She was just confused. We had a great conversation. She turned out to be very friendly and calm. And this is just one of a wealth of examples I could give where I misunderstood someone's intention. Similarly, I often feel misunderstood in my words and my intentions. I'm a chronic over-explainer. That means I explain things a lot. I give disclaimers when I talk. I'm so concerned about being misunderstood that I try to make myself as clear as possible. The trouble is, we will not always be there to issue those disclaimers and explanations for every single thing we do or say. We need to anticipate that we will receive some amount of grace from others, lest we live our entire lives paralyzed by anxiety over not being understood. At the same time, we need to give others that same grace. We are complicated creatures, and every person and every day is so full of complexity that any number of factors could come into play as to why someone behaves or speaks the way they do. How can we expect someone to explain themselves and the way they think to you when they might not even understand themselves? The mind is such a complex thing, and we have such a limited understanding of how it works, and we're not all neuroscientists. So I want to do a little experiment. I want to give you some examples of some things that you might encounter another person doing, and I want you to pay close attention to your immediate reaction to these scenarios. What assumptions did you make about the person? Let's say you're in the store and a person is walking extremely slowly right down the middle of the aisle. You can't get past them. They're not paying any mind to the fact that they are blocking others' path. Okay. How about this one? You're at a social gathering with some other people. The homeowner's dog enters the room and one of the individuals in attendance makes a quick exit. You have a friend who you frequently invite out to social events, but they constantly flake, cancel, and don't show up. Your child's friend gets very excited at every little thing. They jump up and down, flap their hands, they make odd noises. They're sometimes very loud. Other times seem like they're not listening or paying attention to you at all. Sometimes they throw tantrums and seem absolutely inconsolable for no apparent reason at all. How did these situations make you feel? Did you assume anything about the people in these examples and why they were acting the way they did? Was your first instinct that there was some kind of malicious intent or that they were somehow lesser people? I encourage you to make this your first reaction whenever you find yourself becoming irritated or frustrated when others don't act the way you expect them to. Why do you feel this way? Have you made some assumptions about that person? Maybe the slow-moving person was in chronic pain and had no friends or family who could go do their shopping for them. Maybe they just got over surgery or taking some kind of medicine that makes their thinking a little foggy. Maybe the guest at the social gathering was bitten by a dog once recently and doesn't feel comfortable yet around other dogs. Maybe they're allergic to dogs, or maybe they were just feeling a little overstimulated by the gathering and needed some space. Perhaps your flaky friend is going through depression or has some anxiety about the types of events you are asking them to. Your child's friend might be autistic, or maybe they just tend to express their feelings in a very physical manner. Does it really matter? Would you treat them differently if you knew their diagnosis? If so, why do they require a diagnosis to receive your patience and understanding? This brings me to a point that was brought up during the children's story a few weeks ago. We've heard of the golden rule, but even better is the platinum rule. Not just treat others the way you want to be treated, but treat others the way that they want to be treated. Saying, if it was me, what would this mean, isn't going far enough. Now, of course, in these examples, no one is getting hurt. Sometimes our behaviors can be harmful, even if unintentional. Our differences and quirks might explain some of these behaviors, but it doesn't excuse us if we have caused harm. It is good to be mindful on the other side of things that not meaning to hurt someone doesn't make their hurt feelings any less valid. We want to keep an open mind and heart and be mindful that sometimes these disconnects can cause pain. Again, give grace the same you would wish to accept that grace from others. Be a good listener first before trying to correct someone about the things they are feeling. Now think about your own circles, in your own family, your community, your church. Is there someone that just irritates you by their very existence? Why? Is it the way they talk? Do they not seem smart enough? Are they often forgetful, or do they sometimes speak before they think? I encourage you to pause for a moment and reflect on that person. Have you made some assumptions about them? Maybe they don't prioritize their appearance because it's just not a relevant part of their self-perception. Maybe their parents were abusive or overprotective or entirely absent. And as much as we might feel certain that we know why someone is the way they are, we likely don't know them as well as we might think. We will never fully know a person, and that is okay. We will start from a place of patience and respect. Nate and I have found that our friend circles work under the assumption that we are all different and we all have different needs. A number of our friends have diagnoses like autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression. We know that one of us might need to engage in a stimulating activity or step away for a moment or might interrupt because they just weren't thinking. We don't assume malicious intent. The norm in our group is to make benign assumptions instead of thinking about what might be going on with that person. Think about what response is the best. If someone tells you the response they need, don't spend energy worrying about why they need it. Why can't this be our norm instead of wherever we are at currently? Can we trust that we know ourselves best? You won't always know why someone thinks, feels, or acts the way they do, but it's okay to not know. I need you, friends, to let go of that obsessive desire to know why about everything, about everyone. It's just not possible. It's not realistic. We are all huge, complicated puzzles. not only complex and different, but ever growing and changing. It's confusing, but also tremendously exciting. What a big relief. We're all a mix of genes and hormones and conditioning and neural pathways that make no sense at all, really. Save yourself. Look at everyone else around you. A great deal of grief always approaching first with empathy and compassion. Save yourself and everyone else around you a great deal of grief by always approaching first with empathy and compassion. Look at our UU principles, especially the first three. Okay, it's a concept that's repeated over and over. Inherent worth and dignity, compassion, acceptance of one another. We're all able to find our own path for truth and meaning. Democratic process, the world community, the interdependent web, it's in every single principle. It's truly the most UU thing you can do to keep your heart and mind open to others who are different from you.